probably seen over the last sort of few years, insolvencies by numbers have skyrocketed.
And for that reason alone, the department are going to reject the claims.
Getting chased by the insolvency practitioner. So you've got one crack at this. If you get it right, okay, welcome to the Director First podcast, Chris Worden. Today I am joined with a very illustrious guest, Elaine Cam. Elaine is an absolute specialist when it comes to making redundancy claims if you're a director. And if you're a director out there, your business has started to struggle, you're considering liquidation, obviously you're going to be thinking about staff redundancy, but there's a lot of directors out there that don't realise that maybe, just maybe, you will also be able to make a successful claim for redundancy. So without further ado, Elaine, welcome to the podcast. I'm coming to you from the sunny Costa del Kirkham. It's June 2024. Very, very rarely do we get weather like this. So I thought I'd leave that stuffy office and come home for an hour and have a natter with you. So thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invite, Chris.
Hey, no problem. Elaine, I want to start just really about your past history, because your CV makes you better placed than anyone I've ever met to assist directors in what they're doing. Can you tell us a little bit about where you've come from and your story so far?
Well, I worked for the civil service for 19 years, and for the last 15 years, I worked for the Redundancy Payment Service in Manchester. It was based on 8 Town Street, a lovely building, and obviously my duties involved that of getting involved with directors' claims, and making sure they didn't get paid, and if they then appealed to tribunal, I would get the office to prepare my bundle of documents, and I would go along to Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, wherever I was sent, Sheffield, and I would fight the claim on behalf of the department to make sure they didn't get paid.
Let me just go over that point. Your job was to make sure these claims didn't get paid.
Yeah.
Where does that direction come from?
Well, obviously the staff in the office were geared up to looking very closely at directors' claims. So this has been going on for many, many years. It's not something new. In fact, the case law goes back to about 1964 on this subject. And it's always been the department's view that a lot of directors shouldn't get paid redundancy pay, albeit there's nothing to stop them making the claim. So it was just a way of them weeding out which directors obviously were employees and which directors weren't. And it's all based around employee status. So which obviously is part of employment law process. And so they would gather the information in the office, they would make a decision as to whether they thought the director was an employee. If he wasn't, they'd send the usual rejection letter out. If the director then appealed, we would get notification from the tribunal that there was an appeal lodged, and then we would go down the road of preparing the case for the hearing. And that's where I would come in. I would then obviously go along to the hearing with my bundle of documents and then challenge the director at the tribunal.
Okay. And nowadays you've gone for, a full 180, haven't you?
Yeah, obviously that was difficult because in 1995 I left the department. They decided to close the Manchester office and reorganise, and Manchester basically was moving to Birmingham along with some of the other redundancy payments offices. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to commute to Birmingham for personal reasons, and I actually did get accepted as being made redundant, which I took. And then I basically wanted a break for a few months, but I didn't get that break because a lot of insolvency practitioners in the Northwest knew me, knew obviously what I could do, what I couldn't do, and decided that they thought there was a job dealing with insolvency, helping them with insolvency work, and also representing directors at tribunal. So within about a week or two, I didn't have a break. I started getting requests from directors who'd been rejected to now help them with the claims. The only problems that caused was it caused a bit of confusion at Manchester Tribunal and Liverpool Tribunal, where I was well known, because obviously I was always there representing the department, and suddenly I'm there representing the director, and they found that hard to deal with at the start, and maybe I lost a few cases as a result of that. But as time went on, they accepted that I was now representing directors, and it all calmed down.
Well, I mean, let's fast forward. We're in 2024. We've probably seen over the last sort of few years, insolvencies by numbers have skyrocketed. Lots of directors out there, sadly, they're at the end of the runway for the business. I sort of come across two types of directors. One knows a little bit about a redundancy claim, but is really badly misinformed. Another director has not got a clue, and it's a big surprise to them. So I think I'd like to sort of start the conversation off on, who can make a successful claim for director redundancy, Elaine?
Okay, well, things have changed, as you know, over the last 2 years with regards to the way the department are viewing directors. Prior to COVID, it was a lot easier to get directors paid. And then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, they decided they're going to look more closely and make it more difficult. So at the moment, any directors who are on less than the national minimum wage, and from the 1st of April this year, that's increased to £11.44 an hour, they're probably not going to get paid in the main. So directors need to be on a fairly decent wage. If you look at £11.44 an hour over a normal 40-hour week, the director would have to be on £457.60 a week, which is 1982 a month. And I come across a lot of directors at the moment who are on, say, 1,040 a month. And we know that if we have to put down that they're working 40 hours a week, if that is what they're working, then they're going to be below the national minimum wage. And for that reason alone, the department are going to reject the claims.
Okay. So that director that is advised to take sort of £12,000 a year salary and top it up as dividends, and a lot of directors are advised that, due to the tax benefits. Is there any way of getting a successful claim for these guys and girls?
Well, it does vary sometimes. What we tend to look at is the age of the person. It's only when we get kind of more involved in the initial conversation with the director, that we start asking them the more relevant questions, such as, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you? And, are you near retirement? What have you been doing over the last 2 years? And a lot of directors actually are saying, well, I've wound down over the last 2 years and I've not been working as many hours. We come across a lot of directors who are poorly as well, in bad health. And for that reason as well, they've not been working the normal, say, 40 hours, 60 hours a week that they've done at the very beginning of the business. So we then obviously apply that, and that brings them within the national minimum wage in a lot of cases. If they definitely haven't been working the original hours, to say 40 hours a week, at the point that we speak to them. And so that's an area that we look at, trying to assist them. And we have had a few directors paid where, they have been kind of winding down near to retirement, or they have been poorly, not working as many hours. So, these cases need to be looked at individually as well at times.
Yeah, so I mean that's what I do, Elaine. Obviously, if somebody has asked me the question, the answer is I don't know. It depends, but I know somebody who might be able to help you, and I think that's the call to action. Is if people are unsure, at the end of this podcast, we're going to share your details, and I can put you in touch with put anybody in touch with you who may need the service. What type of things are they entitled to claim for being a director?
Well, as long as they've got 2 years service in, there's no 16 hours a week rule now. They could work 1 hour a week and they still qualify. As long as they've got 2 years in, they qualify for redundancy pay. They qualify for up to 6 weeks holiday pay, 8 weeks arrears of pay, and compensatory notice paid, which the maximum claim there is based on 12 weeks. So if you worked at the company 12 years, you get 12 weeks, and it doesn't
Okay.
extend beyond that.
Okay. And I mean, I do see the adverts, and I still see them now, that the average redundancy claim is £9,000. Where do you see it as? Because that's the line I get, Chris. I think I'm going to be entitled to, on average, 9 grand. And I mean, I've been in this game a while, and yeah, I want to come to you, Elaine. What's the average
Well,
redundancy claim at the moment?
yeah, it's hard to say what the average claim is. I mean, we're seeing some fairly decent claims at the moment, more and more decent claims, where employees are getting £15,000-20,000 each. We're seeing that quite a lot at the moment. But again, it depends on their rate of pay, because if they're working short hours or part-time hours and they're only on £200 a week, obviously those claims are going to be pretty low and probably may not even reach the £10,000 mark. And then we can go to the other extreme. And I've got 2 cases at the moment where they've worked, they're over 60 years of age, they've worked for 20 years, so they're entitled to 30 weeks redundancy. They've also got arrears of pay claims for 8 weeks. They haven't got the maximum for holiday pay in a lot of cases, but if they did, that would be 6 weeks, and they would have 12 weeks notice pay. So the maximum net claim at the moment, the maximum is about 34,000 per person.
Okay.
So
Right.
that
So
is the top line, really.
hell of a chunk of change then.
Yeah. So until you speak to a director and you have a look at the pay slips, because we need to have a look at the last 3 pay slips that they were paid on, if they were paid monthly. We need to have a look at the last 3 years P60s, last 3 tax years, and then that's when we can actually sit down and maybe work out an estimate for them.
Okay.
Because you do get a lot of directors when you speak to them initially that are not sure what they're earning per month, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. So the key things are last 3 months wage slips, last 3 years P60s. That'll give you, you'd be in a position to give them some type of indication. What are the reasons why a claim will get rejected?
At the moment, a claim will get rejected if they're on less than national minimum wage.
And so if that's the case, what would you do? Would you take a job on like that? Is the merits to actually say, well, no, you're wrong because of this, that, and the other?
If we were dealing with a director who had a written contract of employment, who had a co-director, so maybe they're not 100% shareholder, maybe they've got 50% of the shares each, or could be 3 directors with a third each, and they're on the national minimum wage, we would probably have a go with it, to be honest, on the basis that if the claim is rejected and they do want to appeal, they've got a better chance at winning an appeal at tribunal if they've got another co-director involved, who's involved in the decision making, and also written contracts of employment. So a written contract of employment in those cases is quite important.
Okay, so directors who are watching this, where a written contract of employment is going to be critical for someone like you, Elaine. And I suppose that's a good thing for startups as well, isn't it? It's to get their house in order should anything happen, further down the road. What would be the ideal process for you? When do you want to speak to a director?
Ideally, before they actually press that button and put the company in liquidation. It's always better then, because sometimes to get the documentary evidence that we need, the P60s, the pay slips, we also need now 12 months company bank statements, and we need a copy of the last filed accounts. We need to get all that information on file, and it can take quite a few weeks, depending on the individual. So the earlier we start these discussions with them and send them a checklist of what we need, it's better for them and it's better for us as well.
Brilliant. Is there a time scale of when they what's the time scale that they can actually make a claim?
Well, with redundancy, they have to make a claim within 6 months of the date they finish.
Okay.
And there's no movement on that. what we tend to do is, if we get a director, every director that we take on, we put together a written application letter, which is a letter that's either addressed to the company if it's not gone into liquidation, or a letter addressed to the company care of the liquidator. And it's basically just putting the company or the insolvency practitioner on notice that this person is owed redundancy pay, and to accept the letter as a written application. That way, that ends the time limit, that waives the time limit. So we can waive that time limit, and then it takes the pressure off.
Okay, brilliant, brilliant. So I know you can't go into detail, Elaine, but could you give us a few case studies that have happened recently that you might be able to share with us? We don't need to know absolute specifics, but I think some real life scenarios would be really helpful.
Well, we had a couple recently, very recently, and they were both quite poorly. Both the directors quite poorly. They were on a fairly low wage, and after a lot of discussions with them, it was apparent that they'd been working part-time hours, and in fact, the daughter had actually stepped in over the last 2 years and had basically, in a way, taken control over a lot of things with the company, the decision making. So again, they're on a low wage. We submitted the claims, and we've just recently very pleased to say that they've both been paid £10,000 each for their redundancy pay and some holiday pay. And that's not the end of it. They are due notice pay as well now. So that's one recent case. We've also had one or two cases where we had two gentlemen who were rejected. It would appear on the grounds that they're on less than national minimum wage. They decided to take the case to tribunal themselves. We were still involved because we were assisting them with the completion of the application, the tribunal, and they were keeping us informed what stage the case was at. And out of the blue, the department conceded on that one. They obviously didn't want to run it to tribunal. So that was another success story. But I would say we probably get paid at least 75% of our directors.
Wow.
At the moment.
And I think I know who the first story is, and if I have connected the dots, that they've been very, very happy with what you've done for them. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
With regards to directors' loan accounts being overdrawn, because that's very, very common. By the time someone gets to me, for whatever reason, how would that impact any potential claim for a director redundancy?
Well, first of all, if we're speaking to the director weeks before it goes into liquidation, then, and it's not a large overdrawn director's loan account, we would ask them to speak to the insolvency practitioner to see if they can come to some arrangement to pay it off. Because the way the department view overdrawn directors' loan accounts is that they look at what is outstanding, what they owe on the date of appointment of the liquidator. So if we can remove that prior to appointment of the liquidator, then we don't have an overdrawn director's loan account to deal with. If that's not possible, then that amount quite often is going to be on the statement of affairs, which the department have access to Companies House, and they can find that out by looking at that, at the statement of affairs, and getting that information. The department also rely on the liquidator to actually, when they complete and submit a form called RP14A, they have to disclose on there if there are any directors that have got overdrawn directors' loan accounts. So if a director comes to us and they do have an overdrawn director's loan account and they want us to deal with their claim, obviously we would arrive at a fixed fee for them. If the claim is accepted by the department, i.e. they accept their employees, then they will offset the director's loan account against their redundancy claim. When I say redundancy claim, that will consist of redundancy pay, holiday pay, arrears of pay, and notice pay. So, for example, if the claim in total was valued at 12,000 and the overdrawn director's loan account was 10,000, they would then get paid the balance of 2,000. If the overdrawn director's loan account was 12,000 and the value of their total claim is 12,000, they won't get any money. It'll just wipe out the overdrawn director's loan account.
But what they will do is they have no director's loan account and they're not getting chased by the insolvency practitioner. Are you happy to share with us what you would charge on that fixed fee basis? Because that's a really handy tool for a director who's sort of at the point where they've got a DLA and they may not have, considered this as an option to reduce it or to eradicate it altogether.
I think our starting point will probably be about £500
Hmm.
to deal with it if it's successful, which will hopefully, in some cases, totally remove the overdrawn director's loan account. And as
Yeah,
long as they're in a position to afford to pay us that,
yeah,
that's all fine and well. But we may
yeah,
come across some cases where they are struggling, because a lot of directors are struggling
yeah,
personally as well with debts. We would always be open to negotiation on that, because
yeah.
we want, although we're in business, we want to be seen to be helping these people at a time when they seriously need some help.
Mm.
So, we're not greedy with our costs. We would renegotiate.
And you know what, Elaine? That's a fair fee, isn't it? Sometimes it costs some money to tidy these issues up, and
Mhm.
if you can get rid of a problem, and it's going to cost you this, at least as long as you're transparent with people, they can make a decision. I mean, Elaine, I don't want to keep you too much. I know you want to get in the garden as well, right? But is there anything you'd like to talk about today before we sort of wrap the podcast up?
Well, I mean, DLA and offset was on my list anyway, so I'm glad we've touched on that. We've obviously talked about what documents we need, which is quite important, because without those supporting documents, we can't submit a claim. Um, I think also, if somebody like yourself or a liquidator advises a director that it would help to contact us, then I would like to think that they do contact us, because what we see time and time again are directors who decide to just go it alone.
Hmm.
Maybe they don't like the fact we work on a no win, no fee, and they think they want to keep all of the money themselves. But we have so many directors calling us at the moment where the claims have been rejected, and they have had our details, but they've just decided to do it on their own.
Mm.
And there's nothing we can do really once they've been rejected. The department won't concede, and the only way forward is to go to an employment tribunal, and they're going to be faced with the same problems at the employment tribunal. So I think, it's important that they do at least make contact, even just to have a chat. We're not going to pressurise them into, allowing us to act on their behalf. But at least we can say, well, we did warn you of pitfalls.
I could echo that because obviously there's a charge for you doing a successful claim, and I'll get it off a director. Well, I'm better off doing it myself. And what I say to them, I say, listen, I could do my tax return at the end of the year. I could plaster my own wall, but I would get a very different tax bill and a very different finish to my wall if I go to a professional. And I've seen some of the things that you guys have been able to do where they would have got this, but by using you, they can get that. So it's got to be, because that's another thing is just go through some of the pitfalls of a director making the claim themselves. I think that's a really, what are some of the things that they get wrong, Elaine?
Well, quite a lot of directors say to me, I've had a look at the online form and it looks easy. What they don't know at that point is, as soon as they've submitted the online form, they're going to get one of two emails. It's going to be the nice email or the nasty email. And the nasty email, as far as we're concerned, is when you get the director's questionnaire. There's 41 questions on that director's questionnaire, and they're asking very in-depth questions about how you operated within your business. Were you subject to the grievance procedure? Were you subject to control and guidance? Who could give you orders? Um, were you the sole decision maker? How many directors are involved? And it's quite a sticky form to fill in for most directors because they're not used to it. And I've seen a lot of these questionnaires that have been filled in really, really badly, because basically what they do, they give too much information. they give irrelevant, information that's not relevant at all. And obviously, we know how to complete the forms in the best way possible. That's what we do every day of the week. And directors just don't understand why they're being asked to complete these forms. So they fill them in willy-nilly and make a mess. And there's no one doing them.
Mm-hmm.
Once you completed them in black and white, you can't go back and say, but I didn't mean to say yes, I meant to say no, because the department won't back down.
So you've got one crack at this. If you get it right, you can get a decent result, a few quid in your pocket that you're perfectly entitled to, that we might, let's add. If you get it wrong, it can end in a disaster and you're going to be out of pocket. So I'd like to echo that. If you're a director who is looking at insolvency, you want to see whether you've got a claim. Obviously, if you're speaking to me, I will be able to put you in touch with Elaine, but some of you might not like me. I completely understand that. But Elaine, where can people find more about you?
Well, we do have a website, so they can go on the website. It will give them my background information and our contact information. We also do send out marketing letters to directors as well. So we go on the London Gazette every day and we see which companies are going to liquidation, and we do pull off details where possible from Companies House and write to the directors if we're lucky enough to get hold of their home addresses. And we send them just a standard letter letting them know who we are, what we do, why we're doing it. So we are kind of trying to reach out that way. The other way is obviously referral from liquidators or accountants and people like yourself, Chris. So they're quite limited because we don't obviously advertise in local papers or magazines about our services. So it's word of mouth, most of it.
And the website is ekemploymentlaw.co.uk, isn't it?
It comes under eKemp Redundancy Claims Limited. That's our official name, and obviously we are regulated by the FCA as well. So in order to do the work we're doing, you do need a license to do this work. So if anybody is approached by anybody, they need to check out whether they've got a license with the FCA. It should be on the bottom of their letterhead. It should be in their terms of business, on their email address. Because if there isn't a license number at the bottom of the correspondence, then they're possibly not licensed with the FCA. So it is important we do choose somebody who's licensed with the FCA.
Brilliant. Elaine, I really do appreciate you joining us today. Thank you very, very much for your time. And I wish you all the best in the future. And thanks for doing such a cracking job. And it's been a great podcast.
Thank you for the invite, Chris. I look forward to speaking to you soon. Enjoy the sun.
Thank you, Elaine. God bless. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.